The world is whispering. Can you hear it? It's not a sound you catch with your ears, but a vibration you feel in the stillness of your chest, a quiet, insistent pull towards something deeper, something ancient. We spend our lives running, chasing the horizon, trying to outpace the coming night, terrified that if we stop, the shadows might catch up. But what if the darkness wasn't something to fear? What if it was merely the canvas upon which the light is meant to dance? I have seen the cracks in the horizon. I have felt the shift in the air, the kind that makes you stop mid-step, look up at the sky, and wonder if the stars are trying to tell you something you've forgotten. There is a sign coming, not a sign to ignite panic, but a signal to ignite purpose. It is the moment the world goes quiet, when the noise of the marketplace and the vanity of the crowd finally fades, leaving you alone with the only thing that has ever mattered: your breath, your faith, and the pulse of God inside you. Many will run, many will seek shelter in things that cannot save them, but you are being called to stand still. You are being asked to become a lighthouse, not by changing your circumstances, but by changing your posture. The darkness is not the end of the story. It is the final act of preparation. It is the crucible that burns away the dross of your worries, your regrets, and your illusions of control, until all that remains is the unshakable gold of who you truly are in Him. Do not look for the sign to escape the world. Look for the sign to awaken within it, because when those shadows draw near, you will realize that you were never intended to survive this life. You were intended to transcend it. Stay with me, for in the next few minutes, we are going to dismantle the fear that keeps you small, and we are going to walk through that doorway together. Do not turn away now. If you leave this message before we reach the heart of it, you might just miss the one revelation that turns your entire life into a prayer. The darkness is coming, yes, but the light that dwells within you, is already home. The weight of preparedness is not a burden meant to crush the spirit or leave you gasping for air under the suffocating pressure of anticipation. We have been conditioned to believe that to be ready for a crisis is to be hypervigilant, scanning the horizon with squinted eyes, waiting for the first flicker of a shadow to signal that our world is about to fracture. We stockpile resources, we armor our minds with theories, and we construct fortresses of logic to protect us from the encroaching unknown. But true, spiritual preparedness is the antithesis of this frantic, outward-reaching survivalism. It is a quiet, internal migration. It is the steady, rhythmic process of clearing the inner rooms of your soul, so that when the world outside grows dim, you are not left stumbling in a house filled with the clutter of your own anxieties, distractions, and half-hearted commitments. When we talk about the weight of preparing for a darkness that feels inevitable, we must recognize that the darkness itself is merely an environment. It is a condition of the world, a shifting of the seasons, an inevitable consequence of a fallen reality. It is not the ultimate enemy. The enemy is the state of our own hearts when we are faced with the absence of light. If your foundation is built upon the shifting sands of external validation, temporary comforts, or the illusion that you can command the future, then the moment the light fades, your foundation will dissolve into dust. Preparedness, therefore, is the arduous, beautiful work of anchoring your identity in something that does not require the sun to remain visible. It is about becoming so deeply rooted in the soil of divine truth that the loss of external sight does not trigger an internal collapse. Consider the nature of a candle. It does not fear the darkness. It does not lament the sunset. Its entire purpose, its very reason for being, is defined by the necessity of the shadow. Without the dark, the candle is just a piece of wax and a string. It remains latent, unfulfilled, and hidden. It is only when the ambient light retreats that the candle truly becomes what it was created to be. Your life is not so different. You have been carrying a flame within you since the moment you were breathed into existence, a spark of the infinite that is far more resilient than you dare to believe. The weight of being prepared is simply the discipline of tending to that flame. It is the practice of feeding your soul with prayer, with stillness, with the radical surrender of your ego, ensuring that the oil in your lamp does not run dry while you are distracted by the noise of the marketplace. This is why we must move away from the paralysis of fear. Fear is a thief that steals the present moment, promising that if you worry enough, you might somehow bypass the inevitable. But grace does not operate in the realm of what if. Grace operates in the reality of I am. When you cultivate a light so bright that darkness cannot find a foothold, you are not ignoring the signs of the times, you are transcending them. You are recognizing that your true home is not found in the stability of the economy, the predictability of society, or the safety of your environment, but in the unwavering consistency of the one who holds the stars in their places. To be prepared is to be so filled with this presence that when the shadows inevitably deepen, you do not look around for a way out. You look within and find that the light has never left you. It has been waiting for this exact moment to shine at its brightest, turning the darkest night into the most profound opportunity for your spirit to finally see what it has been missing all along. We are obsessed with signs. We scan the skies, analyze the headlines, and pick apart the complexities of the world, hoping to find a map that leads us to safety or a secret code that unlocks the future. We look for the sign of the times as if it were a flashing neon light on a billboard, something external and undeniable that tells us exactly when to run, when to hide, or when to prepare for the end. But there is a profound misunderstanding in this frantic search. We treat these signs as alarms meant to trigger our survival instincts, when in reality they are invitations meant to awaken our dormant souls. A sign is never the destination. A sign is a finger pointing toward the truth, and if you spend all your energy staring at the finger, you will miss the glory of what it is gesturing toward. The truth is that the external chaos you see, the shifting tides of society, the instability in the air, the collective anxiety that seems to permeate every corner of the earth, is simply a mirror. It is a reflection of the state of the human heart. When the world begins to fray at the edges, it is not just a geological or political event. It is an invitation to look inward at the interior landscape of your own life. Are you living with an integrated soul, or is there a gap between what you profess to believe and how you actually inhabit your days? That is the only sign that truly matters. The external darkness is merely the backdrop that makes the inner light visible. If you are waiting for a specific miraculous event to change your life or to signal the beginning of your spiritual transformation, you have already misunderstood the nature of the divine call. Divine communication is rarely loud. It does not typically announce itself with trumpet blasts or cataclysmic shifts in the physical realm. More often than not, it is a whisper, a nudge in the middle of the night, a sudden, piercing clarity in the midst of a mundane task. It is the realization that your attachment to the world is fragile and that your true citizenship lies elsewhere. When you see the world shaking, do not look for the nearest exit. Instead, look for the place within you that remains unshaken. That unmovable center is where God resides. The signs we fear are often just the breaking down of the false identities we have built. We rely on our careers, our reputations, our comforts, and our plans, all of which are temporary, fragile structures. When those structures begin to tremble, we call it a crisis. But perhaps if we were brave enough to see it, we would call it an opportunity for liberation. You are being asked to return to the heart of the Father, not because there is nowhere else to go, but because nowhere else is home. The obsession with signs is often a distraction, a way to keep your mind busy so that you don't have to confront the silence of your own spirit. But when you finally stop the noise, when you stop trying to predict the timeline of the end, you find yourself in the present moment, which is the only place where God can actually be encountered. It is not about knowing what is coming. It is about knowing who is holding you through it. If you can master the art of being present, if you can cultivate a stillness that is not disturbed by the roar of the world, then you have found the only sign that guarantees your peace. You stop living in the tomorrow of your anxieties and start living in the I am of the eternal. The darkness that you fear is just a shadow, and shadows have no power in the presence of the one who knows their source. You're not waiting for a sign to be found. You are waiting for the courage to finally accept that you have been found all along. We spend the vast majority of our lives living in a state of suspended animation, trapped in the agonizing tension between what we fear might happen tomorrow and the regrets of what we failed to do yesterday. We treat our lives like a ledger, constantly calculating the risks of the future as if we were the architects of our own destiny. We are so consumed by the need to control the outcome, to secure the timeline, and to ensure that our fragile existence remains insulated from the unpredictable storms of life, that we completely forfeit the only currency we truly possess, the present. This desperate, clawing need to dictate the rhythm of the future is the primary source of our exhaustion. It is a form of idolatry, a secret, subtle belief that if we worry enough, analyze the data long enough, or prepare with enough intensity, we can somehow manipulate the hand of the Creator to favor our specific desires. The reality, however, is a much more humbling truth. The timeline of the future does not belong to you, nor does it belong to the powers of this world that seem to be spinning out of control. It rests entirely within the hands of the one who exists outside of time itself. To surrender is not to give up. It is to recognize the boundaries of your own humanity and the infinite scope of divine sovereignty. When you try to grasp the reins of time, you are only tightening the knot of your own anxiety. You are essentially trying to play a part in a play that you did not write, directed by someone whose vision is vast and incomprehensible. There is a deep, agonizing friction that occurs when the human ego insists on controlling the clock, while the soul is being called to trust the timing of the heavens. Think of the moments in your life when you felt the most anchored. They were likely not the moments when you had everything figured out, when you had the perfect plan for the next 5 years, or when your life was perfectly secure. They were the moments of surrender, the moments when you hit a wall, a sickness, a loss, a sudden, unexpected shift, and realized you had absolutely no control. In those moments, the facade of self-sufficiency crumbled, and for the first time, you were forced to look up. It is in that space of absolute helplessness that the divine timing begins to make sense. It isn't about everything going the way you planned. It's about everything falling into place according to a purpose that is far older and more profound than your own ambitions. When you release the need to know the when and the how, you suddenly become available for the now. The anxiety about the future is a form of spiritual blindness. It keeps you looking down the road, tripping over the very ground you are standing on. But when you relinquish that need to control, the world around you suddenly comes into focus. You begin to see the beauty in the struggle, the grace in the interruption, and the wisdom in the waiting. Waiting is not a waste of time. Waiting is the furnace where trust is refined. It is where you learn to differentiate between your frantic, ego-driven desires and the quiet, steady pull of the Holy Spirit. If you could see the tapestry from the perspective of the weaver, you would realize that every thread of darkness, every moment of delay, and every season of confusion is being used to create a pattern of breathtaking significance. You are not meant to manage the timeline. You are meant to inhabit the mystery with your head held high, knowing that the one who authored the beginning is also the one who is orchestrating the end, and every single second in between is held in perfect, loving, and absolute balance, in a world that screams for your attention, demanding you to be louder, faster, and more visible. The most radical act of rebellion is to cultivate a quiet, impenetrable sanctuary within. We are taught from childhood that to be safe is to be surrounded by the right defenses, the right people, and the right external conditions. We build our lives like fortresses, believing that if we just secure the perimeter, we can prevent any darkness from infiltrating our peace. But the true sanctuary is not a location, it is a state of being. It is the practice of carving out a space inside your soul where you are unreachable by the chaos, where the noise of the world hits an invisible wall and dissolves into silence. This sanctuary is not an escape from reality. It is the most honest way to inhabit it. When you have a place to retreat within, you don't have to fear the shifting shadows because you know where your true home is located. This practice of radical presence is the armor of the modern spirit. It requires a profound, intentional withdrawal from the distractions that feed our fear. We are addicted to the what if, the constant scrolling of bad news, and the obsessive need to know the ending of the story before we have even lived the middle. But the present moment is the only place where God lives, and He cannot meet you in the future you are inventing in your head, nor in the past you are replaying in your heart. To be present is to be fully available to the grace of the moment, regardless of how dark or bright that moment may appear. It is the simple, yet incredibly difficult discipline of choosing trust over analysis. When you learn to settle into the present, you realize that your anxiety was never about the world. It was about your resistance to the current moment. To live in this sanctuary, you must learn to practice the art of stillness. This is not the passive silence of the empty-headed, but the active, focused silence of a heart that is waiting to be filled. It begins with the breath, the rhythm of life that you do not have to earn, that you do not have to manufacture. By returning to the breath, you return to the source of your existence. You become like a tree planted by a stream, whose roots go deep beneath the surface, feeding on water that the world cannot see. When the winds of trouble come, when the sky turns dark and the ground begins to shake, the tree does not pull up its roots in a panic. It anchors itself even deeper into the hidden, sustaining truth. This is the sanctuary of the inner life, an immovable foundation that remains anchored in the divine, even while the outer branches are buffeted by the storm. You are being invited to stop living as a victim of your circumstances and start living as a guardian of your peace. You have a responsibility to keep your inner sanctuary clean, to sweep out the debris of fear and the dust of resentment that settles in when we forget who we are. Every time you choose peace over agitation, every time you choose trust over suspicion, and every time you choose love over cynicism, you are reinforcing the walls of that inner sanctuary. You are declaring that while the world may be broken, your soul is being made whole. This is the ultimate defense against any darkness, not a sword of iron, but a spirit of absolute, unwavering trust. In that quiet center, you will find a reservoir of strength that the world did not give and cannot take away, a wellspring of hope that bubbles up even in the most arid seasons of your life, proving that you are never alone and never truly lost. When the world feels like a ship caught in a violent midnight gale tossed upon the relentless waves of uncertainty, the human heart instinctively searches for a harbor. We are perpetually looking for an anchor, something solid, something unyielding, something that remains fixed while everything else around us is in constant, chaotic motion. We grasp at the fleeting promises of stability offered by human institutions, by our own cleverness, or by the hope that if we simply work harder or believe more intensely, the storm will dissipate. Yet the truth is that the physical world is, by its very nature, a place of shift and shadow. It is not designed to be our permanent home. It is a temporary, moving landscape, and to place your hope in the consistency of the shifting sand is to invite the very anxiety you are trying so desperately to escape. The ultimate anchor is not a thing, a place, or even a specific outcome that you desire. It is a person. It is the unwavering, eternal presence of the one who walked across the water and commanded the wind to be still. When you build your life upon this foundation, you are not basing your hope on the absence of darkness or the cessation of trials. You are basing your hope on the reality of a love that precedes the darkness, sustains you through the darkness, and remains standing long after the darkness has been conquered. This is the foundation that is immovable because it is not built from the finite materials of this world. It is built from the infinite grace of the Creator. When the world feels unsteady, that is not a sign that your foundation has failed. It is a sign that you are finally being tested to see where your true allegiance lies. Many people spend their entire lives trying to hold on to the world, clinging to the things they can see and touch, only to feel abandoned when those things inevitably begin to erode. To be anchored in the ultimate reality is to be liberated from that desperate, white-knuckled grasp. It is the realization that your life is not a series of accidents happening to you, but a story being written by a hand that never trembles. Even when you cannot see the path forward, even when the clouds are so thick that the horizon has vanished, you can walk with absolute quiet confidence. You do not need to see the shore to know that the ship is held by an anchor that goes beyond the depth of the sea, reaching into the heart of the divine. This is the faith that changes everything. It turns your fear into curiosity and your confusion into a profound, settled trust. This anchor is the promise that you are already known, already loved, and already held. It is the certainty that your identity is not defined by what happens to you in the physical realm, but by whose you are in the spiritual realm. When you tether your soul to this truth, the chaos of the world loses its power to dictate your joy. You begin to walk through the fire without being consumed, and you stand in the storm without being moved, because your stability is derived from an eternal source. This is the secret to living with purpose in a world that feels increasingly devoid of it. You become a carrier of a different kind of reality. You become the living, breathing evidence that there is a kingdom that cannot be shaken, a light that the darkness has never been able to overcome, and a promise that every tear you shed is being gathered into a vessel of ultimate restoration. You are not waiting for a future rescue. You are walking in the reality of a present, living salvation that transcends every shadow you will ever encounter.